We've always heard that North Korea is isolated, sanctioned, and an extreme communist state with very few international connections. So how is it that, according to available statistics, it spends $10 billion a year on its military? Where does this money come from? And how does it fund its country's regular expenses? It is said that the $10 billion spent on its military accounts for 30 to 40% of its GDP. This shows that among all the countries in the world, North Korea allocates the highest percentage of its GDP to its military. Let's see how it makes money. North Korea, unlike South Korea, does not have significant underground resources. In terms of natural resources, neither of them are wealthy countries. However, North Korea does have some coal and iron reserves, though not enough for major exports. Whatever little iron and coal it has, it sells to China. Since the Korean War and the division of the peninsula, North Korea's only income has been that small amount of iron and coal, 95% of which it sold to China. The remaining 5% was used domestically. This was how North Korea managed its affairs until the era of Kim Jong-un. During his rule, the country took on another major expense developing nuclear weapons. And what's interesting is that they not only build these weapons, but also conduct tests. North Korea's last nuclear test took place in 2017. After that, the whole world sanctioned the country, even China. The most significant sanctions against North Korea were passed by the United Nations Security Council. According to this resolution, no country is allowed to buy coal, iron, or seafood from North Korea. In other words, it was completely sanctioned. The 95% of coal and iron that China used to buy was now unsellable, leaving North Korea stuck with its stockpile. This made North Korea's already struggling economy even worse, and hunger spread throughout the country. So, the North Korean government contacted China saying, "Come on, do something. You're not buying our iron and coal anymore." China responded, "That's too obvious. I can't buy those. If you want to produce something that we can sell, start making fake beards, artificial eyelashes, and wigs. Those we can easily buy from you." Interestingly, North Korea imports real hair from China, processes it into artificial hair products, and then sells it back to China, which in turn exports it worldwide. In short, without China, North Korea would collapse. Even its basic necessities like rice, fertilizers, and food come from China. China ignores North Korea's sanctions and, in a way, keeps it alive. China buys North Korean products under the table. How? North Korean ships load iron and coal and head into international waters. To ensure no one detects the trade, another ship arrives, takes the cargo, and sails to a different location. Then the goods are transferred to another ship and another, until the trail is lost. Finally, the last ship docks at a Chinese port and unloads the goods. In exchange for this coal and iron, North Korea receives oil and money from China. However, transferring money directly is difficult. So all financial transactions between China and North Korea are handled by the Hong Kong and Macau mafia. They know how to move money around the world without leaving a trace. This is how the North Korean government manages its expenses. But what remains unmanaged is the situation of its people. According to Google statistics, 42% of North Korea's population is hungry. Hunger in the sense that they all suffer from malnutrition. But Kim Jong-un doesn't seem to care much. They keep Pyongyang looking somewhat clean, but the rest of the country is in ruins. North Korea tries hard to attract tourists to increase its revenues. But despite these efforts, there's no real improvement. Tourists do visit, but very few because they're afraid. Recently, North Korea has been making efforts to attract Russian tourists by offering special facilities to visit interesting locations in the country. Many believe this is just propaganda. Even Russians are hesitant to travel there, saying, "Why would we take such a risk? If we want to travel, we'll go somewhere safe." You've probably heard about what happened to the American tourist Otto Warmbier. He visited North Korea, stayed in a hotel, and spent 5 days sightseeing. But on the day he was supposed to leave, he was arrested. He removed a North Korean propaganda poster from the hotel wall as a souvenir. He didn't realize the hotel's cameras were watching him. He was arrested and taken straight to prison. He was told, "You stole and your crime is severe." They told him that if he didn't want to be punished, he had to appear on camera and say, "The United States is responsible for my actions." Terrified, he did as he was told. Despite this, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. He protested, saying, "I did what you asked. Why won't you forgive me?" They replied, "We did forgive you. Otherwise, you'd be executed." A few months later, Otto Warmbier's condition worsened, and North Korea decided to send him back to the US. He was in a coma. What exactly happened to him remains unknown. When he arrived in the US, doctors scanned his brain and found evidence of severe head trauma. The injury had put him into a deep coma, leaving him in a vegetative state. His parents decided to let him go to spare him further suffering. So much for North Korea's tourism industry. Now, who would dare visit that country? Another way North Korea makes money is by recruiting hackers from among its people. If someone shows hacking skills, they are hired specifically for one type of hacking: cryptocurrency wallets. They hack anywhere they can steal money, but their main focus is cryptocurrency. You know that nearly 1 billion was stolen from Bangladesh's central bank. Many believe North Korea was behind this heist. Although nothing is certain, most of the money mysteriously vanished. This case showed experts that North Korean hackers are serious and highly skilled. Why do North Korean hackers mainly target crypto instead of regular bank money? Because stolen bank funds can be reversed. But with crypto, once it's gone, it's gone. Experts estimate that in 2024 alone, North Korean government hackers stole about $1.3 billion in crypto, mostly Bitcoin. This is an unbelievable amount for cyber theft. It makes sense, though. North Korea has a population of 26 million, and even the bare minimum to sustain them costs a fortune. Of all crypto thefts in 2024, 60% were committed by North Korean hackers, while the rest of the world accounted for only 40%. For a heavily sanctioned country like North Korea, crypto is the perfect solution. Not only do they acquire it easily, but they can also spend it worldwide without detection. Even if they buy something from within the US, the seller won't know the buyer is from North Korea. That's why crypto is a crucial tool for sanctioned countries. Another long-standing source of income for North Korea is counterfeiting 100 bills. No one knows where they got this technology, but their counterfeit bills are 99% identical to real ones. These fake bills are sent directly to Macau casinos, where they are easily laundered and enter the market. North Korea reportedly earns about $25 million annually from counterfeiting. Though not a huge sum for a country, printing more would be too risky, and if they overdo it, the US might take serious action. Because washing and cleaning it would be too difficult. It would need a washing machine the size of a truck. Of course, we're joking. But if they want to print even more money than this, The US government might take it seriously because it would have a huge impact on their economy. Another source of income for North Korea, which some people talk about, but we're not sure if it's true or not, is that they produce methamphetamine and distribute it to different countries through their diplomats. Because, as you know, a diplomat cannot be searched at the airport. Even their bag cannot be checked. This is an international law known as diplomatic immunity. These diplomats fill their bags with methamphetamine, enter the target country, go to the North Korean embassy in that country, and from there they distribute the meth. Of course, some people believe that North Korea stopped smuggling methamphetamine to the world after 2006. However, a new source of income has been created for North Korea, and that is selling weapons to Russia for the Ukraine war. And on top of that, they have sent 20,000 of their soldiers to Russia to fight against Ukraine. North Korea receives a lot of money from Russia as rent for these soldiers. On the other hand, North Korea also uses its own people as slaves. For example, all of a sudden, they send 2,000 people to Russia to work on the construction of a bridge. These workers do not get paid. They only receive food and a place to sleep. The actual money goes to the North Korean government. North Korea also sends its slaves to Laos and China. According to unverified information, the North Korean government receives $1,000 per month for each slave it sends abroad. Despite the fact that North Korea brings dirty money into the country through highly illegal methods, its people see no benefit from this money. 90% of this money is spent on developing the North Korean military, as well as paying military salaries, and of course covering the expenses of the government and its chubby leader. If you check the International IQ Registry website, you'll see that South Korea is the second smartest country in the world. Even though North Koreans are the same people as South Koreans, they are way behind in every aspect. Even though this country is located in the smartest region of the world, China, Japan, and South Korea are all shown in dark red, meaning they have the highest average IQ. If North Korea, like South Korea, had focused on industries and technology, it wouldn't have been economically any weaker than South Korea. But that's how their government works. An extremist communist government, which isn't even comparable to East Germany. Interestingly, after World War II ended, Stalin really wanted to enter northern Japan and spread communism into Japan as well, so that Japan wouldn't completely fall into American hands. But when Japan was hit by atomic bombs, Stalin suddenly woke up from his daydream and said, "If we enter Japan, they'll definitely drop an atomic bomb on Moscow," because at that time, the Soviet Union hadn't developed its own atomic bomb yet. That's why Japan was spared. If they had entered, Japan would have definitely been split into two parts, North Japan and South Japan. But it's also worth mentioning that when the Americans entered Japan, they tried to quickly kickstart the country's economy so that the idea of communism would vanish from the people's minds. That's why Japan suddenly started to grow. If it wasn't going to grow then, when would it? Just 15 years after 2 atomic explosions in one country, that country became one of the world's strongest economies, and that's how communism was pushed back. Now, understanding the story of the Korean Peninsula is also interesting. After the atomic bombs on Japan, just 4 years later in 1949, the Soviets tested their first atomic bomb, becoming the world's second nuclear power. Just a few months after gaining this power, they entered the Korean Peninsula. They saw they had lost Japan, so they didn't want to lose Korea too. That's why the Americans also entered from the south, and the Korean War broke out. This war lasted for 3 years, and eventually they split the peninsula between themselves. And to this day, Korea is still divided into 2 parts. The south, like Japan, and the north, worse than Laos, Vietnam, and every other communist country. I hope you've now learned about North Korea's sources of income. Dirty money that not even the best washing machines could clean.